Hey guys, it's time for 8.4, which talks about surface area of cylinders. Okay, just a little bit of a backtrack to what we've been looking at lately. We should know by now that the area of a circle is pi r squared. So if we took a cylinder and we only looked at one side of it, okay, you see a circle. Okay, and if we just found the area of that circle, we would get pi r squared to use that to find that area. If we had a cylinder, okay, now it's pi r squared h, okay, which I hope starts making sense to you as far as if this is pi r squared, if we started stacking those disks on top of each other, those circles on top of each other, we would get this entire cylinder. Okay, that's volume. Okay, volume is something that you can use for liquid form because everything that comes out of this can is the volume of the cylinder, or what I wrote there, the capacity that that cylinder holds. Cheers. So that's the capacity, is the amount of, say, a Coke in a Coke can. If we're doing surface area though, surface area is the top area, the bottom, the top, and all the way around, all of that area, the surface of the cylinder. So it's as if we took this can and ripped it and laid it flat. We would still have a circle on top, a circle on the bottom, and then a flat space, and we set it down to be flat. That's what happens when we're taking a surface area of a cylinder. And we've got a bit of a larger formula for it, but with aspects within it that we've done several times already. So this is kind of the progression. Notice this formula is 2 pi rh, or twice pi, the radius and the height, plus 2 pi r squared. Now the pi r squared, maybe you notice right away, is the same thing as the area of a circle. Well, 2 pi r squared means obviously we now have two circles, the top and the bottom, to add to what this will be the area around this can or the cylinder. Because 2 pi is in each one of these sets, I did kind of say maybe, just maybe, you recognize maybe there's a shortcut. If I know that pi is 3.14, which we continue to use, 2 pi is 6.28. To shortcut some things that you punch into your calculator in this, you might use 6.28 times r times h, or the r squared times 6.28. Those are some things for you to think about, to where some of this that you plug into your calculator might not take as long. Okay, but I did write this red question over here to get you thinking about one of the questions we're going to do on, I think, the second page. What if the cylinder was open, ended like a glass? Like what I poured this into, the top is open. So there's not a surface area on the top. So think about that for a minute as we go in through doing these. Okay, I want to start with the reteach page, which is often the one that we always start with. I'm doing numbers 1 and 2 on the reteach page. And we have kind of a short cylinder on number 1, and it tells you that the radius is 2, and it tells you that this is 4 high, so our height is 4. And that's all we need, is just a radius and a height to find the surface area. And then we, just like I've said in every such situation and all these lessons, we are going to plug and chug. So we take this formula and we say, okay, 2 pi is 3.14, my radius is 2, and my height is 4. That's the first part of this formula. And we're going to add that to the 2 pi r squared, or 2 pi. Now the radius is 2. Squaring a 2 is 2 times a 2, so that's now a 4. And then you get to go to your calculator and just start plugging stuff in, or actually we plug this in, now we just chug away as what goes into our calculator. If I put this into my calculator, if I multiply all these guys correctly out, I would get, and you should get, 50.24. Okay, try that for a second. We're going to add that to, if I multiplied that second half of the equation out, I'm going to get 25.12. And I'm going to try to remember to use the squiggly equal sign a lot, because these are all going to be estimations. You will get an answer that should be close to 75.4, and that's yards squared. Okay? Plug in that part, get this answer. Plug in that part, get this answer. Add them together because that's part of the formula, and you will get an answer close to this. And I will remind you while I'm thinking of it, the answers you'll see on the answer keys that I provided for you on Classroom will sometimes be a tiny bit off, but that's because they always use the pi button on your calculators, which is a tiny bit different than 3.14. It goes on to accumulate and include some of the rest of pi that you don't use very often. And so their answers will usually be a tiny bit higher. This one on number 1 is exactly the same, so not an issue on this one. Okay, but it will be on number 2 that we're about to do. Okay, I think I can do number 2 and still be on this screen. We have a longer cylinder, and it tells us a diameter this time of 10. We don't like diameter. What we want, if the diameter is 10, the radius must be what? 5, because radius is half of the diameter. So this radius is only 5. They do tell us that the height is 36. Notice height and length are pretty interchangeable. If you see a length of a cylinder or a height, they're the same thing basically. Okay, so then we start plugging these in. 2 times pi times the radius, which we now know, remember, is 5, times the height is 36. And we're going to add that to 2 times pi. Our radius again was 5. 5 times 5 is how you square the r, and you'll get 25 there. Okay? 2, using this formula, 2 pi r h, okay, and 2 pi r squared. 5 squared is 25. When you plug this into your calculator, you will get 1,130.4. And we're going to add that to, when you plug those into your calculator, you get 157. When you add those guys together, I get 1287.4. That's probably what you will get if you use the same numbers I have for pi. When you look at the answer key, you'll see that they have 1288.1, very close and not a big deal as to how far away that is from ours. Those are the first 2 on the reteach. Okay, there's 2 other ones that I want you to do to be prepared for the homework assignment that I will end up giving you for 8.4. Let's move on to the skills practice worksheet. Remember to have paused this video if you were still working on some of those so you can see what I wrote, and then you can fast forward through me all the erasing again. Okay, skills practice, I'm going to do 3 of them, 1, 5, and 7. 7 being the one that I warned you about with the vase that has an open end on the top. But number 1, we have a cylinder much like number 1 on the other page. And they tell us that the radius is 2. And they tell us that 4 is the height. So then we just plug it in. Okay, 2 times pi times the radius times the height plus 2 times pi. I don't need this guy over here anymore. I can erase him to make us have a little bit more room. Radius is 2, so squaring a 2 is 2 times 2, which is a 4. Okay, catch up. When we plug this into our calculator, we would get, if I gave you enough time, and maybe you already have enough time, this is 50.24. When we add that to what's on the other side is equal to 25.12. So when we add those guys together, we're going to get approximately 75.4. And that's feet squared. Okay, catch up to me a little bit. Make sure you plugged in the correct numbers. Hopefully you get that answer. If you don't, pause the video, rewind it, whatever you need to do so that you can get the same answers. I'm not doing number 2, I lied here. That's 3. No, it's not. Hey, it's going to be 5, guys. I'm going to do that one that looks fairly large with the dimensions on it. Make it so that it's really not as large as it seems. Because this is only a 5 here for what we could use as our height. Our radius is a length all the way across of 16. So if that's 16, our radius would only be 8. So be careful there again. They give us a diameter of 16 all the way across that circle. Okay, so the radius is only 8. Right? And then we plug it in. You have 2 times pi times a radius of 8 times a height of 5. And we're going to add that guy to 2 times pi. And the radius here is 8. So 8 squared, because it's r squared. 8 squared is 64. Okay, and then we just plug away. We put these into our calculator here. When we do so, you're going to get 251.2. And we're going to add that to, when you plug these guys in over here, you're going to get 401.92. We simply add those guys together just like the formula says, and your answer will be somewhat close to 653.1 that I have. It's 0.5 that they have, which obviously is very close. Okay, I'm going to try to do, and should be able to do it without any problem, number 7, still on this screen. Okay, number 7 says we have a vase that is 10 inches tall. In other words, that's our height. It says it has a diameter of 3 though. Okay, that would be like saying that all the way across the opening or across the bottom, this cylinder isn't the best of cylinders because it gets a little smaller down there. But just notice that if it was giving us half of the circle, it would only be half of what they said is 3. So what's half of 3? The radius is only 1.5. And then we start plugging in, but there's something we're going to have to be careful about, right? The first part is 2 pi, which we know is 3.14. And then it's times the radius, which is 1.5. And then it's times the height, which is 10. Now none of that changed because that represents, if I can, I'll write my picture over here again. Remember that this was our surface area thought. Okay? And this part in here is what the 2 pi r h is. And then these guys are the pi r squared. Is that still on the screen yet? Those guys are pi r squared, and there's 2 of them. But in this guy, there really is not 2 of them because we don't have the top. So when we do this, all we do is we knock out the 2, and we just say there's 1 of them. So it's just going to be pi. And the radius squared, remember our radius is only 1.5. When we square that, we should get 2.25. And now we plug away. Okay, we punch these guys in here. And that's 94.2. We're going to add that to over here. It's only going to be 7.1. So when we add those guys together, you're going to get an answer that's approximately 101.3, and that's inches squared. Okay, so don't let it trick you too much. There's just not a top to that, so we didn't include the top area. Catch up to me a little bit. Make sure you know why it is what it is. And we'll go on to the homework page. That problem there was why I wrote that red question, so we don't even really need that there anymore. Hopefully you thought about that enough to where you kind of knew what was going to happen there. Okay, last page, homework practice page. I'm doing 3 of these for you. And again, there'll be some of the other ones will be on a homework assignment that I will give you. You have this cylinder. It's not too terribly long. Looks something like this. Gives us a 15 here and a 4 over here, which actually is just the radius. So we have a radius of 4 and a height of 15. And that's all we need to know. So we plug in 2 pi r 4 h 15, and we're going to add that to 2 pi, and we have r squared this time. So r is 4, so r squared is 4 times 4, which is 16. Now, we plug those into our calculator. You're going to get 376.8 when you do that part. When you do the second part, you're going to get 100.48 for an answer that should be close to 477.3 inches squared. Okay, take a look at that. The answer on your answer key says 477.5, so we're definitely close enough to say, yeah. The only difference was what they used for pi, of course. Number 5 is nice because they tell us to round everything off. 5 gives us a cylinder, and I'm going to kind of shortcut a little bit, but if you notice it says my radius is 3.9. Okay, well if we're rounding, 3.9 is darn close to 4. And you should always know that pi is 3.14. If we're rounding, pi is darn close to just 3. And the height, they say, is 1.8. Well, 1.8 is darn close to 2. So really, these are the numbers that we get to use this time to make number 5 a lot easier. So we simply say 2 times pi, which this time is just a 3, times the radius, which is a 4, times the height, which is 2, and we're going to add that to 2 times pi, which is 3, times r squared. R is 4, so 4 squared is 16. And when we multiply all that together, we're going to get 48 here. And we're going to add it to what would be 96 over here. Okay, so our answer would be pretty darn close to 144. And that's centimeters squared. I'm only doing one more problem with you before we finish for the day. That's number 8 on this page. Number 8 is a story problem, but it is really no different than every other problem we've done as far as it tells you exactly what we need each time. We're using a cylindrical tube that he's putting a poster in. We're assuming that after he puts the poster in the tube that he closes it up with another cap, because it's going to have a top and a bottom to it when we do this. But it says a diameter of 6. Well, if the diameter is 6, then r equals 3. And then it tells us our height or our length is 50 centimeters. Okay, and then all we do is go ahead with our formula. 2 times pi times radius, which is 3, times height, which is 50. And we add that to 2 times pi. And now we have radius squared. Our radius is 3. So 3 squared would be 9. And when you plug that into your calculator, you're going to get 942 here. And we're going to add that to, when you plug this into your calculator, you get 56.52. And I think I can write my answer underneath this and still be on the screen. When you add those two together, you're going to get approximately 999. Okay? All this is another lesson yet again where we just plug these numbers in to a formula that we are given, and hopefully you're careful enough to when you put them into your calculator you get the answers that you see here. The nice thing about a video is you can rewind it as many times as you need to make sure you're doing it right, and use this to really help you learn. I'll see you next time when we're going to look at 8.5.